SuperMicro Computer is up about 25% in the last 6 months, but in the last month, down about 9%. And last week, it formed an inside bar, showing investor indecision. Also, we can see on the weekly chart, there is a flag pattern forming, suggesting there could be a breakout either way, to the upside or the downside. So in this video, I want to unpack the price action of SuperMicro, long-term, medium-term and short-term, and look at whether there's a trading opportunity on the horizon. Let's take a look. So you can see on screen, I have drawn a trend line under the price action here from the trough in November 2024 and including the troughs in April 25 and last week also. You've got one line there and also a line on the top as well, including the most recent price peak of Feb 25 and also last week's price peak here, 28th of April. So we can see the price is starting to compress. We are getting consecutively higher lows, but also lower highs. And price does seem to be compressing into this area here, suggesting there could be a breakout on the horizon. So generally what we see when we do have a flag pattern is price breakout either way, either towards the upside or towards the downside. And if we zoom out on the weekly chart of SuperMicro, we can see this stock has been in a long-term uptrend. Since the low in October 2018, SuperMicro has moved up consecutively over the last 5 years. And you can see it's made consecutive higher highs and higher lows as it's been trending up. Now, around about July 2022, the stock actually took off, moving away from the long-term trend line and forming a medium-term uptrend, more accelerated, more aggressive. So we can see at this point here, there was some consolidation after this new accelerated uptrend. And we can see here there was some euphoric price action in around December 23 up until March 24. And as we know, whenever you see this euphoric buying action, it's normally the last stage of the upward movement before we get a price correction. And we can see here that's exactly what happened. So in around March, April 2024, price did reverse and started to form a new downtrend. So since that peak in March 2024, price has been trending downwards. And we can see the formation of lower highs and lower lows as price has moved downwards. But it does seem to have found significant support around this $17 level here in November 24, so around 6 months ago. And since then, it has been trying to form a medium-term uptrend with the creation of higher lows and higher highs. So if we mark up some trend lines on the bottom of the price action, also the top, you'll notice that there is a flag pattern forming. Now, typically when you get this type of pattern, price is compressing with buyers and sellers, fighting over which way the price is going to go. And typically you get two outcomes. Price either breaks out to the upside or it breaks down to the downside, breaking these lines here. So what could happen is price will break out to the upside, something like this, or we get a breakout to the downside, something like this. Of course, there is a third possibility, and that is price continues to track sideways. But I don't think this is going to happen. If we look closely at the way the price action is formed over the last sort of 6 months, we can see price is respecting this lower trend line here with the formation of these lower lows. Now, if you look closely at the last 5 weeks, so starting in sort of March 2025, we can see these lows here are getting higher. Now this one here, the week of 21st of April, the low was 28.90. Then last week, the low was 28.78. So that low last week, it did break slightly lower than that week there. So there is some selling pressure last week. And you can see that it opened high and closed low, but the close was above the 50% of the down bar, showing the selling isn't that strong, and price was able to close above 33.46. Now this week, which obviously is still unfolding, we've got an inside bar at the moment showing indecision in the price action. So it will be interesting to see what price does this week and where it closes. But the way that it's setting up at the moment does indicate there's a higher probability that price is going to move upwards and keep respecting this trend line here. Now next, I want to mark up some key price levels on the chart so we can get an idea of where SuperMicro is in terms of the overall price action, and where could be a possible entry for a short or medium term trade. So the first level I've marked up, you can see, is around $22.50, which is corresponding to this price action here, covering May 23 until January 24, about 6 months. And you can see, if I zoom in a bit, SuperMicro consecutively pulled away from this price level, came back and found support, and price wasn't able to move downwards. So the sellers did try, but there was enough buying interest to keep that price above this key level of $22.50. And you can see I've marked up this price level here of around $36, which corresponds to this price peak here. So you can see after SuperMicro broke through the 22.50 level in June 23, it did find resistance at this level of 35.83 before coming back and finding support. And it bounced up and down for a few months before finally breaking out in January 2024. So this could be a level to look out for the future. Next level I've marked up is 66.24, corresponding to this peak here. This is the most recent price peak for SuperMicro, which was formed in February 2025. So clearly there is some level of resistance here, which it might face in the future. And the last level I've marked up is the all-time high for SuperMicro, which is around $123. So now that we've got the key price levels on the chart, we can see that SuperMicro at the moment is trading around this level here, $32, and it's just underneath this key level of $35. So price might face some resistance trying to break through this level as it starts to move up in a bullish scenario. Of course, I'm going to talk about two scenarios, the bullish scenario and the bearish, to cover both sides, because you never quite know what price is going to do. It's all about thinking about the probability of what price could do, but always thinking about the worst case scenario and protecting your capital. So if you are looking to buy into SuperMicro, perhaps for a medium term trade, where could be a good entry? I think at the moment, looking at the price action, an entry above this peak here could be an option. So this peak here from last week is 37.82. And also, if you were to enter there, it also clears this key level here of $35. So effectively, if you enter above this peak, you're entering above that last week's high and also this key level here, which reflects the peak over here as well. So that would indicate buyers are in control and there's higher probability that price is going to move up. And if you were to take that trade entering above this level here, what's the upside? Well, applying the TradingView trend tool, we can see that the upside potential to this next level of potential resistance is 74%. And you could put your stop loss at the last week low here of around 33.69, which would be about 11%. So you've got almost a 1-to-7 risk reward ratio, which is very, very strong. So this could be a good trading opportunity for SuperMicro. And if price was to break through this key level here of $66, taking out this peak here, price could keep running on up until the next level of resistance here, which is the all-time high of 122. So this would be a massive 223% upside, which would be a sort of medium to long-term trade. It would probably take, 6 to 12 months for that to unfold, but could give you a great return. Now, if you're more risk averse, then you might want to wait for the price action to clear this zone here and actually take out this peak here of $66. So that could be another entry point in the next few months. And if you were to enter here and set a 10% stop loss, you could put your potential take profit level at the all-time high of 122, giving you an upside of 85%, which is also really, really good. So those are two trading opportunities for SuperMicro. And that's the bullish scenario. But what about the bear side? What if price falls away? Where could it go and where might it stop? So looking at the chart, we have got this short to medium term trend line supporting the price action. But you'll notice that the price action of SuperMicro is quite a long way away from this longer term trend line. You can see back here, if you remember, price did pull away from the longer term trend in July 22. It pulled away quite aggressively. There was a euphoric buying pattern here before it started a short-term downtrend. Since then, it's found support here. It's trying to move back up. But at the moment, price could go either way. And if it falls away and it breaks this short-term trend line, the probability is it's going to fall and possibly find support at this level here of $22. So that's the first level where it might find support and try to move up once again. Worst case scenario, if there is more selling pressure, then the price may fall further. And it might fall into this level of $11 here, which, if you notice, this level here corresponds with the long-term trend line over the last 5 years, which should be quite a strong level. So this level here, where the two lines intersect, is a key support level for SuperMicro, around $11. So those are my thoughts on SuperMicro. Whether you're a trader or an investor, I don't think this stock is quite ready yet to buy, but I think over the next few weeks we will get more confirmation of price direction. SuperMicro Computer surged over 30% last week after announcing a multi-billion-dollar deal with a Saudi data center operator. However, some analysts are still cautious on this tech stock based on its falling profit margins. So, is now the right time to add SMCI to your portfolio, or should you wait a little longer? In this video, I'm going to cover the latest details with SuperMicro and see if this stock is ready to buy. SuperMicro Computer rose 19% in midday trading last Wednesday, adding to Tuesday's 16% gain after announcing a multi-billion-dollar deal with a Saudi data center operator. The rally comes on the heels of a bullish coverage initiation by Raymond James, which is betting big on the company's role in the AI hardware race. Raymond James Financial initiated coverage of SMCI stock with an outperform rating and set a $41 price target, reflecting further upside from last Tuesday's close. The firm noted SMCI's strategic positioning in the $145 billion AI infrastructure market, where it currently holds a 9% market share. SMCI stock has climbed nearly 50% in 2025, far outperforming the S&P 500 index. The latest rally was triggered by a $20 billion agreement with DataVault, a Saudi Arabian data center company, announced last Tuesday. SuperMicro's partners Nvidia and AMD also moved higher last week after unveiling separate AI collaborations with Humane, an AI subsidiary of Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund. SMCI's product lineup, which includes GPU-dense servers and liquid cooling systems, has made it a key supplier in the AI gold rush. With firms like Nvidia and AMD depending on scalable hardware solutions, SMCI's ability to rapidly customize and ship high-performance computing systems currently gives it a competitive edge. Raymond James emphasized SMCI's nimble and vertically integrated model as a major reason for its optimism. The firm expects the AI infrastructure segment to remain in hot demand throughout 2025 and beyond, which could directly benefit SMCI's top and bottom lines in future quarters. SMCI's Tuesday rally not only put it among the top market performers, but also highlights growing investor appetite for AI hardware suppliers. While many pure AI stocks have struggled in 2025, SMCI's diversified revenue model and exposure to essential infrastructure gives it a unique advantage. However, while the stock price action was super strong last week, SMCI's recent financial performance does offer doubts for some investors. For example, net income for the third quarter ending March 31st, 2025 fell 73% year over year, coming in at 108 million, down from 402 million. In contrast, net sales increased 19% year over year, reaching 4.59 billion, up from 3.85 billion in Q3 2024. Now, another key metric investors should consider when looking at a stock is its gross profit margin. Margin tells you how much of every dollar of revenue is left after costs of goods sold to help the business cover its overheads and other operating expenses. A low gross margin is okay if a company sells in large volume, but it's not easy to maintain a healthy business. In SuperMicro's case, gross profit margins have been trending down for over a year. This is a problem because while the company is growing its top line, it isn't necessarily making progress towards profitability. On face value, the company's most recent earnings report showed an impressive increase in net sales of 19% year over year, reaching 4.6 billion. These strong sales were based off its strong demand for its storage and server solutions. However, a closer look at the numbers reveals SMCI's gross profit actually declined to 440 million, a worrying decrease of 26%. The reason for this large loss in gross profit comes down to the company's gross profit margin falling considerably from more than 15% to less than 10%. Consequently, increase in revenue was more than offset by a decreasing margin, and SuperMicro earnings are also going in the wrong direction. This past quarter, quarterly net income totaled less than 108 million, its lowest level since 2023. Whilst earnings can fluctuate from one period to the next, it is a troubling trend for the business and may turn off investors. The danger is if companies' profits don't improve, that could make it a more expensive buy, and that could be the case if it isn't able to strengthen its gross margins. The company is forecasting diluted EPS of 30 to 40 cents for the current June quarter. Now, if that were to hold up for the entire year at the top of that range, the company would post an EPS of $1.60. And based on a share price of $45, which was around last Thursday's closing price, that would mean it's trading around 28 times its future earnings. However, this projection does assume that spending on servers, data centers, and tech infrastructure remains strong, which is not guaranteed given the current macroeconomic conditions. So, overall, what does all this mean for investors and traders alike? In the past 12 months, SuperMicro shares have fallen close to 60% and look like they're now on the rise after finding support at the significant low of $17 back in November 2024. Looking from a technical perspective, the chart looks bullish with SMCI trending upwards. And currently there is a short to medium term trading opportunity with a clear price target of $66. However, from a fundamental point of view, SMCI's profit margins remain slim, and this may be a concern for some long-term investors. With such tight margins, any sales growth it generates may not necessarily translate into a big improvement on its bottom line. And based on this important fundamental metric, some investors may want to wait for the next earnings report to provide more clarity on longer-term growth prospects of this company. If you've enjoyed my analysis of SMCI, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel. SuperMicro Computer has jumped 19% this week so far, based on a deal it's done with a Saudi Arabia company. So in this video, I want to unpack the potential trading opportunity available for SMCI. Let's take a look. Now, before we start, if you find value in my analysis of SuperMicro or other stocks, you may also find value in my trading tips email newsletter. I'll leave a link in the description below. If you sign up, I'll send you high quality trading tips that have already helped hundreds of my students become better traders in just 30 days. Check it out. So SMCI has jumped almost 20% this week so far. With the news announcement, it's done a deal with a company in Saudi Arabia. According to an article by Guru Focus, SMCI rose 19% in midday trading on Wednesday, adding to Tuesday's 16% gain after announcing a multi-billion-dollar deal with a Saudi Arabia data center operator. The stock has climbed nearly 50% in 2025, far outperforming the S&P. And the latest rally, it says, was triggered by this $20 billion agreement with a company called DataVault, a Saudi Arabian data center company. So this is great news for SMCI and has sent the stock surging. Let's take a look. So you can see on screen, I've got the weekly chart for SMCI. And we can see since this significant low back in November 2024, the stock has been trending upwards. It created a peak in February 2025 at around $66 before it's fallen into this low recently of around about $28, and it's looking to move up from here. And you can see on screen I have drawn a trend line, and it shows that the price is coming back to test this on a few occasions before finding support and pushing off. Particularly this week with this deal with the Saudi company, it has moved up around 20%. It's looking very bullish. So if you are looking to trade SuperMicro, what sort of opportunity is available for you? Let's mark up the chart with a few lines and look at the key price levels which might offer resistance as the price starts to move upwards. So the first level I've marked up is $35, which corresponds to this price peak back in August 2023. And we can see at the moment, price did consolidate sideways slightly in the last few weeks, but now, after this deal, it has broken well above this price level. Second price level I've marked up on the chart is $50. And we can see that when SuperMicro fell from this significant high here of 122, it did fall into this area of $35 before having a rally in the other direction, meeting resistance around about $50 before falling away again. So let's mark that one up. Next level I marked is 66, which corresponds to the most recent price peak in February this year. So this is where SMCI found some resistance before falling back towards this trend line. I've also marked up $100, which is always a round psychological number for investors and traders, a price level where people often come in. And this also is reflected in the chart around about this level here and these two levels here. So it has offered short-term resistance in the past. And the final level I've marked up here is 122, which corresponds to SMCI's all-time high. So now, if we look at the weekly chart with these key levels marked up, we can see where SuperMicro is in relation to these levels. So we can see this week with this news announcement, price has taken off significantly. It's pushed through this level of $35 and is still under this next level of $50. So if you were to take a possible trade on this stock over the next few months, what could that look like? Now, based on the price action, you could use $35 as your entry trigger, which means that based on this week's price action so far, you could potentially take an entry this week or next week. And entering at this level would mean that the next level of possible resistance would be this $50 level, which would give you a potential upside of around 39%, with your stop loss set around 15%, corresponding to this price action here, the lows created here and here. So this initial trade would give you a risk to reward ratio of 2.69. And if it does break through this level here of $50, the next possible level of resistance would be the $66 level, corresponding to the peak here. And if price moved up to this point, it would give you an upside of 84% with a risk reward of 5.89. Following this, if SMCI continues to move up over the medium to long term, then the next level would be around $100, offering a really big reward of 180%. And best case scenario, if price keeps going from there and targets the all-time high, then on offer is around 240% upside. So a really good opportunity for SMCI if price can push through all these levels of resistance over the next months and possibly years. Now, because this week has been such a big move, it may be wise to wait for the price to close this week and also see what price does next week. Let's see if there's any selling pressure. We can see straight away that the stock is looking bullish. It looks as if this line here is a significant level of support with the trend line moving upwards. It's broken through $35 and it's sitting under 50. Now, if you're a bit more risk averse in terms of your trading rules, you may wish for price to break through the psychological level of $50 before entering. So over the next few weeks, we might see SMCI do this. It might break through the $50 level, maybe this week, maybe next week. It might take a few weeks to do that. This week price might close high in the high 40s, and then maybe next week there'll be a slight pullback to test what the sellers have got. I think then if price does pull back in the next few weeks and breaks the peak created by the upward move, that would give you a bit more confirmation. And you may wish for price to pull back to 50 and actually break 66, this peak over here, for more confirmation that price is moving up. And this would be a more conservative entry. And let me give you a third option, which is probably medium risk. In this third scenario, we can use this week's price peak as our entry point and wait for a pullback over the next few weeks. If we get a pullback next week, we can use this peak here as our entry point. However, if next week is also bullish, we can use that peak for the entry marker. So let's say, for example, in this scenario, this is the closing bar for the week. We would then mark up the price peak for the overall week, and that would be our entry point. And then we could expect a down bar next week. So if price moves up to this peak this week, takes a breather next week, perhaps comes back to test 38 or 37, and then breaks the week after, either breaking this level here or breaking this level of 50, that would constitute a good entry point. So if you were to take an entry above this week's peak when it closes, you would have potential upside of 42% to this next level here of $66, and then an upside potential of 115 to the $100 round level. Following that, you've got 163 up until the all-time high. So whichever entry you consider, there's lots of upside potential with SuperMicro Computer. And based on my own trading experience and style, I think this is the entry I would be looking at. Wherever price closes this week, I'd be looking at that exact price peak and then watching what price does next week. If we get a down bar next week, or maybe for 2 weeks in a row, and then price finds support, it falls over the next 2 weeks, no more than 50%, so it's strong, and then moves up to take out the potential peak of this week, that would give me more confidence that it is trending upwards, and that would give a safe entry with relatively high risk reward ratio. Don't forget, if you come in at this point here, you could set an initial stop loss of 15%, and you've got an upside potential around about 163%, which gives you an overall risk reward ratio of over 10. It's a really good trading opportunity. Even if price finds resistance at the $66 level, you've still got an upside of 40%. So still a great trade with a risk reward of 2.78. However you look at it, SMCI is looking bullish, and it does present a good opportunity. Let me know what you think. Would you take this trade? What are your rules? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Since the peak of $47 3 weeks ago, SuperMicro is now pulling back and has pulled back for the last 2 weeks, presenting a possible future entry and a trading opportunity for this stock. There's potentially 156% on offer for a trade with SuperMicro. So in this video, I want to talk about this opportunity and also discuss some trading rules which might get you into the trade at a good price. Let's check it out. Now, if you're new to trading and you're looking for an effective, simple strategy to trade stocks for a profit, check out my short course on my website. Go to davidblewett.com/6-step strategy and check out my trading short course. For June, I've got a special offer, 20% off that course with the code June20. Check it out in the description below. So SMCI is in a long-term uptrend. It's been trending up since October 2018. Now, if we zoom in on the weekly chart, we can see that since this price peak of around about $123 in March 2024, SMCI did trend downwards into this price trough here at around $17. And since then, it seems to have found support and is now trending upwards. And you can see the price is moving up, creating these higher peaks and lower troughs. And the trend line does suggest that this price action is going to continue. Now, since the price peak created in February 2025 at around about $66, price has trended back down and found support at this trend line. It pushed off, and 3 weeks ago, it did create this most recent peak of around about $47. Now, in the last 2 weeks, SMCI has pulled back, creating this price action here. Now, for the trend to continue and for a possible trading entry, what we need to see is for price action to take out this peak here of $47. We need the buyers to come back in, overpower the sellers, and take the price beyond this peak here to confirm the price action is going to keep moving up. Now, before I explain the trading opportunity here and some possible entry rules, I want to mark up some key price levels to understand where SMCI is trading right now in relation to its historical price action. So you can see I've already marked up $123, which corresponds to SMCI's all-time high from the peak that was created back in March 2024. We can see we've got a significant low here that was created in November 2024, around about $17. So I'm going to mark that up. Now, in between these two key levels, we've got a price level here of this recent peak in February 2025. So let's mark that one up. Underneath this peak of $66, we've also got a level around about $48. We can see price came from this support area here, traded up and found resistance around this area here, and also most recently, the most recent peak was also around $48. So I'm going to mark that up as well. And another level I want to mark up is this point back here in August 2023. You can see that it met resistance here and then fell away before moving sideways. So that's something to consider for the future. That's about $35. So with these levels now on the chart of SMCI, we can see that price is trading between this level of $35 and underneath this level of $48. So the most recent price action shows that price created this peak and found resistance at 48. And the last 2 weeks it has fallen away with some selling pressure. It does, however, look as if there's a little bit of support around this level here, the bottom of these two weekly bars, around about $38. Now, if we look at the daily chart, we can see that that $38 level is a real level. You can see the peak here on this daily bar on 13th of May created a price peak of $39.10. Now, since that peak, price moved up. It did gap up, finding resistance at $48. It fell away, and then it's been 2 days, so this day here, 23rd of May and also the 30th of May, where price fell, and the low was corresponding with this level here, this peak here. There seems to be some support around this $38 level. So let's mark that. And I put that one in dashed line just so I know that that line is on the daily chart, not the weekly, so it's not as strong. So right now, SMCI looks as if it's pulling back and finding short-term support around about this level here of $39. So The obvious trade entry would be a Dow theory entry where price needs to now rise up and take out this high here. Remember, in the overall trend, we've got higher highs and higher lows. So we've definitely got a medium-term trend emerging, which corresponds with the longer-term trend. So we should expect price to keep moving up based on the price action. Now, could we get another red bar next week? Yeah, that's possible. Price may fall a bit further. The obvious level where it might fall into is this key level here of around $35. And that might correspond with this trend line. So we could see a couple of weeks down and price falling into this level here, around about this zone here, potentially moving downwards towards the end of June before moving back up. That's definitely possible. So effectively, we're going to see price action like this. So if price continues to fall, it might keep going until it hits that sort of $35 zone before moving back up. That's one possible scenario if the next 2 to 4 weeks are bearish for SMCI. We should expect it to find support around about $35 if it respects the trend line and if the trend is going to continue. Based on the current price action, that is more likely. The trend should continue. However, for my more bullish scenario, price could find support exactly where it is now at that $39 level. That is quite possible. And if it finds support at $39 and moves up from here, we're going to get price action something like this. So we might get another inside bar next week, or perhaps it'll move up from here, finding support at $39, challenging this level here, 48, and then moving up to challenge the most previous peak here of $66. This is quite likely too. And you can see on screen, I do have both the lower trend line marked up here, and I've got this upper trend line running over these two peaks here, suggesting that SMCI is trading within this channel at the moment as it's trending upwards. So if SMCI continues to move upwards and trade within this emerging channel, then the price action is likely to stick within it. Effectively, the price is doing this. So you can see inside the channel, it is bouncing between the lower support level and the upper resistance level. So if this continues, then the next movement upwards, could be towards this $88 level over the next 6 to 8 weeks, if it's very bullish. If it's not, it might take a bit longer. It might come back and find support around here and then move up from this direction here. However, any way you look at the chart, it does look as if SMCI is looking bullish, and it is trending upwards at the moment inside this channel. And that suggests that each time it moves up, it's going to create higher highs and higher lows, creating higher prices. So the price action is looking good, SMCI is trending up, and there's definitely a trading opportunity. So where could be the best price to actually enter this stock for a good upside potential? Let's take a look. So you can see the most recent peak for SMCI is the peak of this bar here, created in the week of 12th of May. And that price peak is 47.80. So this is the price that SMCI needs to trade above to trigger a Dow theory entry. Essentially, we want price action to do this. It needs to find support here, either at $39 or perhaps at this point here around 35. That would be the test. And then after the selling has run out and buyers come back in, for the buyers to confirm they're in control and they're willing to take the price higher, we need the price then to move back up and take out this level here. So the price needs to exceed this price peak here of 47.80. So effectively, you could have a rule where you would enter the stock once the price goes above 47.80. You could set a limit order and say, look, I want to enter the stock with the broker 1 cent above that level. So your entry would be 47.81 exactly. And then once it breaks through this level, triggering your entry, there's a high probability that the price will push up to this level here of $66, which corresponds to this peak here. And beyond then, we've got the next level up, which is going to be this level of the all-time high of 122. Now, it might find resistance at these levels here. You can see here, as price traded down from the all-time high, it did find support here and move back up to these levels here before falling away once again. So we might find on the move upwards that once again, there's a little bit of resistance here around at this level of $102. And also it does correspond with that round psychological number of $100, which sometimes can cause support or resistance either way. So if you were to take this trade and enter on Dow theory, with your entry being above this key price level here, you set an initial 15% stop loss and you set your take profit target at this first level here of $66. So you'd have an upside potential of 39%. And with that stop loss, you would have a risk to reward ratio of 2.55, which is perfectly acceptable. So that would be the trading opportunity using Dow theory. And after price moves up and possibly breaks this level, the next level up potentially for resistance would be around about $100. That would give you 110% upside. Risk reward 7.34. And if it keeps going to the all-time high, that next level of resistance is going to be 122. So that's an upside of 156 and a risk reward of 10.27. So this is setting up nicely for a highly profitable trade with relatively low risk. Now, another option to enter this trade is to use a counter trend entry. So with this style, it's a bit more aggressive, but would get you in early to the trade. So instead of waiting for price to take out this peak here, you would enter after price takes out this peak here of the most recent down bar. So this gets you in earlier, but it's a bit more aggressive and carries more risk. So entry would be here around $44. So in effect, you want price to do this. From the peak, come back and test this level here, test $39. So hopefully it holds above this week. And then if this week is a green bar and price reverses and takes out this level here, you can enter once price takes out this high here of $44. So this would get you in a little bit earlier than this peak over here. Carries more risk, but gets you in earlier. And one of the reasons why it carries more risk is because if you enter here above this level, it obviously hasn't got through this key level here, $48. So you might find you enter and then obviously it runs out of steam and falls away from here. So two options, Dow theory entering above here and a counter trend entry entering above here. So with the counter trend entry getting you in earlier, there's obviously more profit available targeting the aforementioned levels. So entering here at $44, you can put your stop loss at the bottom of these two bars here, which is around about 11.3%. And then of course, the first target is going to be this level here of $66, which gives you a 51% upside. If it breaks through there and targets 100, you're going to be up around 130%. And if it keeps going and the trade unfolds up until the all-time high, you'd have a potential of nearly 180%. So you can see the counter trend entry gets you in earlier, does allow you to take more profit, but also carries more risk. So that's going to come down to your trading style, whether you want to go with the Dow theory or a counter trend theory. It's obviously up to you. I think both entries offer great upside potential. I think in this scenario, because there's so much available, future profit, Dow theory is probably, the way to go, but it's up to you. If you found value in my analysis of SMCI, please subscribe to the channel to help me out. Thanks for watching. See you next time.